2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our presentation, Living Your Best Life with Travel Opportunities. This presentation is brought to you by the Massachusetts chapter of the National Aging in Place Council. For over 16 years, the mission of the NAIPC has been to bring professionals and communities together to champion aging in place through collaboration, education, and accountability between professionals and members of the public. My name is Brandon Campbell, and I will be your host. I'm the program director of the Massachusetts chapter of the NAIPC. I am also an estate planning and elder law attorney with a practice in Beverly, Massachusetts. So learning how to age in place is important, but that doesn't mean your home should become a prison cell. Getting out of your home is just as necessary to a happy life as learning how to live in the home of your choosing. Yet as people age, it can be harder and harder to leave your home. As we age, it can be harder to walk, sit, let alone run. Taking a trip by a plane to an exotic location can be exhausting, even scary. So can even going to a restaurant or visiting a relative in their home. For people with mobility issues, a flight of stairs in their home can be a challenge. Sadly, some people simply don't use large parts of their home because it's too difficult to access those areas. I'm very pleased today to bring to you 2 experts that can give you some tips on how to keep moving and grooving. We're going to hear from Rachel Corcoran, an occupational therapist, and Ryan McEniff, a home care provider. After they speak, we will have a brief open discussion. And at the end of our presentation, we'll post the contact information of our speakers if you want to hear more. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Rachel Corcoran of COTA Travel. Rachel is a certified occupational therapist who is devoted to improving the quality of life of older adults through leisure activities. Rachel, take it away.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm super excited to be here as a new member of the NAIPC and a new business owner. I've had my business for about 1.5 years now, and it has really evolved in that time. I worked in nursing homes my whole career, and I learned a lot of different lessons and things that pointed me in the direction of wanting to help people improve their quality of life in the community and beyond. So the services that we provide are all provided by occupational and physical therapists. We assist people with their mobility and cognitive challenges, provide support as needed for any trip they want to take. That could be a trip to a doctor's appointment. It could be a trip to a wedding. It could be a trip out of state. It could be a global trip. So we have the skills, knowledge, expertise to be able to really make sure that our clients are safe and happy. They feel confident with their decision to leave the house, and it's been really very rewarding on both sides for the elders, the families, and us as clinicians, really being able to use our skills to help people in this way. We've had a lot of great experiences bringing people to family events that they wouldn't have been able to go to. People that live in a nursing home that think they can't leave the nursing home, but yet with the right type of support, they are able to go and have a nice time, and the family doesn't have to worry a bit, and everybody's happy to be together. So we are a very unique opportunity for people to have a clinician be the person that takes you to wherever it may be, adds an extra level of professionalism and responsibility to the situation. And it's a win-win situation for everybody involved. We like to promote the ability to help people discharge from rehab situations or hospitals. We take them home and make sure that they are set up for success before home care gets started. And we also partner with home care agencies to be able to service their clients that they're not able to get to specialty appointments or family events as well. I think that might be a good general overview, but please let me know if there's anything else I can add.
So Rachel, I have a question. Can you tell us some of the things that may give the people you work with the most anxiety about getting out?
Sure. Yeah. People are afraid to fall. People are afraid that they won't have somebody with them to answer questions as needed, or to be able to make sure that they express all the information that needs to be passed on when they're going to different places. And definitely having a therapist with them gives them that higher level of confidence. And the clinicians that work for me are all very experienced with many different psychological disorders, cognitive disorders, and physical disorders.
Rachel, I have a question. If, let's say, you were to be hired to assist an older adult attend a wedding, what would a day look like? Take us through a day in the life of what that would be like working with you.
Sure. Let's actually start with how they would get into our system. And so first they have a general inquiry. We talk about what we can offer. Then we have them fill out a client agreement that gives us a general idea of the client's condition and needs. And then from there, we either discuss with the nursing home, the family, the community, wherever they're taken care of, or if they're not, if they're just a solo ager, we go and meet with them to kind of figure out and do an evaluation, see what their needs are going to be, and then determine what the pricing would be based off of their needs. And then the day of the actual event, say we're going to a wedding, we can go and help them get showered and dressed and out the door and to the wedding, make sure that they're getting the right diet that they're supposed to have. If they're supposed to have mechanical soft food, they can't have a sandwich. So we are able to make sure that everything is taken care of for them in what they need for in that situation. If they need to use the bathroom or go dancing on the dance floor, we're right there with them. And whenever they're ready to leave, we go ahead and bring them home, get them settled. It's an hourly rate, so we can stay as long as they need us to make sure that they're ready for the night. And it's really been a lot of fun for people to be able to have that level of assistance and enjoy these activities.
Do you normally, is it usually a team or is it one person? And how do you pick the best person or team to work with the individuals?
Sure. So I have a pool of clinicians. We are occupational therapists and physical therapists, and we usually base it off of location so that there's not too much cost added to the job for the client. And all of the clinicians I have on staff currently are everything I would want for my clients to have. So they're fun, they're responsible, they're experienced, they're responsive, and safety is always number one for everybody. And so the initial evaluation that gets done, we could then determine what would be the best fit.
Okay, I'd like to get Ryan in on the discussion now. So Ryan McNiff is the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the NAIPC. In addition, he is also the owner of Minute Women Home Care, a private home care company in Lexington since 1969. He has also started a new venture related to helping older adults get around safely. I'll let him fill you in on that. Ryan, why don't you take it away?
Thanks so much, Brandon, and it's great having you be part of the group. Not only Brandon, but Rachel, welcome to the group. It's great to see it growing, and it's great to be able to do these. Yeah, so Minute Women Home Care is a private home care company. I'm the owner of it. Private home care is paid privately or through cash, check, credit card for an aide to show up to somebody's home to provide services for blocks of time. Usually those blocks of time, depending on the home care agency, could be anywhere between 3 hours at a time, all the way up to a minimum of 8 hours. And as COVID has really squeezed the caregiving pool, more and more agencies are finding that they're increasing their minimums. And because of that, one of the things that certainly I'm passionate about, which is why I joined the NAIPC, is educating and helping families. Is I've been part of a company called Well Aware Care that provides fall detection and remote monitoring for seniors in their home. These devices are placed on the wall and they monitor using radio waves, no cameras, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If a fall occurs, a text message and email is sent out within 90 seconds of that fall occurring. And Rachel, you brought up a great point about family members being worried about falls. And I listened to a podcast called The Drive by Peter Attilia, and he had a guy on that was talking about muscle, and it was the second time on the podcast, and they were talking about how the studies that they believe in and that they've read and they've vetted show that the majority of deaths for people over 50 years old are directly related because they don't have enough lean muscle mass. And what happens when they don't have a lot of muscle mass and they're not strong? Well, they fall over. They're unable to break their fall. Their legs are not strong enough to support their body getting up and down. And so the point that you bring that up is absolutely correct. And it was just kind of ironic that we were doing this podcast of ourselves, and I had just listened to that. And so, my business, as well as it sounds like Rachel's business, is because as seniors get older, they lose muscle mass, they lose their strength to be able to be stable and independent on their own, and they need either an aide with them in the home to make sure that they're safe. They either need fall detection monitors because they don't want to afford or can't afford private home care, or they need somebody like Rachel for transportation because they're not safe to be driving and moving around out in public on their own because they're not strong enough to do so. So it's certainly a common denominator and an issue that is going to affect everybody, whether you're over the age of 50 already or your parents are getting over the age of 70. That's a problem we all will face, and we need to be as cognizant of that fact and try to avoid losing as much muscle as we humanly can. But getting it back to me and Minute Women, we provide private home care services, and certainly we do a little bit of transportation. But one of the reasons why I was excited to do this with Brandon and Rachel is to discuss transportation and how difficult that is for seniors. And it was difficult before the pandemic, and it's near impossible now with the pandemic. So we are finding it's harder and harder to cater to seniors who are looking for either low hours or specifically transportation services, exclusively looking for transportation services. But as we see more and more adult children live further and further away from where their parents are, whether the parents retired away from the family or they moved out of the nest to California or wherever many moons ago, mom and dad are solo and on their own and aging and need support from the community and from businesses around the community to be able to still be active in the community. So I think that that's going to be an important subject that continues to grow and weigh on the minds of a lot of adult children as well as their parents. What do we do about transportation and getting around town, especially when so many people live outside of the Boston area and between 95 and 495, where it's the suburbs, and further out is even more suburbs of the greater Boston area.
If I could jump in with a question, Rachel, you had brought up that you work together with home care, and I believe, Ryan, you said the same thing. So maybe for our audience members, you could each talk about where each other's jobs begin and the other ends. Ryan?
Sure. Let me, if you don't mind, Rachel, I'll start with that because I think I can pass that over to you quite well, that baton. You know, generally when it comes to transportation in the past, home care companies have fallen into two categories: those that provide transportation to existing ongoing customers, and then home care companies that will be willing to provide transportation to ongoing customers, meaning sporadically they call up and say, hey, on this day I need transportation here, can you provide it to me? And they're willing to do that. What we've seen over the last 5-7 years is that less and less caregivers have their own cars. Uber was great with this because Uber was very, very cheap when it first came out. So a lot of caregivers ditched their cars, said, hey, I can get around town for a nominal amount of money and I don't need a car anymore, which then put a dent in the amount of caregivers who were willing to do transportation cases. And so what ended up happening was those caregivers that were doing the blocks of time of 6 or 8 hours at somebody's home generally had a car themselves to get to and from there, or if they didn't, they could use the owner's car to drive and go get the groceries or whatever prescriptions needed to be done. But as we've seen with the pandemic, it has become a lot harder because less caregivers have a car, and now Uber is $25 or $30 just to go 5 to 10 miles down the road, and most caregivers are driving well more than that to their job. So what we've had to do as a company, and this is more personal with Minute Women, is that if we have a really good referral source that sends us a lot of business, I will personally, or somebody from the office will personally do that transportation case to help out and be a partner with them. But it's becoming more and more often that we are relying on people like Rachel to handle the transportation side of things, because we have caregivers that do not have vehicles or unwilling to do the short hours for transportation. And otherwise, I can't be everywhere driving everyone around when I'm trying to run the day-to-day business. So that's where Rachel has been a really great referral partner for us, where I've tried to introduce her to facilities and communities and individuals that are needing needing transportation services, because that's what Rachel does and she's an expert at doing it. So that's where we found difficulty in the home care world, and that's why I highly recommend people calling Rachel up in the Boston area, because that's what she does, and most home care companies are getting away from it because setting it up and handling those inquiries are just becoming more trouble than they're worth, to be as blunt as possible, because the amount of money that's involved with the amount of setup that's involved, it ends up just becoming a wash, if not a loss leader. So that's where we use Rachel, and Rachel knows how to do it, and it's great. And I'll pass the baton that way.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify because I got an interesting call the other day. Like I said, this is a new business for me, so we're just kind of figuring it out as we go. And this particular woman was looking for straight up transportation. She wanted her mom picked up and dropped off at the gym, and then picked up later and brought home. So my response to that is, it wouldn't make sense to use our company. We have skilled clinicians that are providing companionship throughout the time. So if mom needed assistance in the gym, we could by all means do an exercise program with her. That would be a good use of the resource. In this case, we would recommend doing an evaluation of mom and what her needs are, and then determine a better cost-effective way for her to get to the gym. So whether that be, using Council on Aging or the ride or Uber, we would assess what her capacity is to use any of these services, and then get it set up and practice with her until the goal is met for her to be able to get to and from the gym safely and independently. If that's, not an option, then, we can consider an hourly rate for this trip that they want. But my first recommendation would be to do an evaluation, see what the situation is, and determine if there's a better cost-effective way for mom to get to and from the gym twice a week. In terms of being able to, help out in the companionship side of it, we're medical liaisons at these doctor's appointments. A lot of aides go to the doctor's appointment and they can pass the paper and they can bring the paper back, but they're not asking pertinent questions. They're not providing input on the patient's current status and how they're functioning. And it's been very beneficial for both the doctor and the clients to have a medical professional in that office with them.
And that's where we've used you, is not necessarily the driving to the gym and back, it's the medical appointments. And just to double down on what you said, not only are the aides not going to be able to ask those questions, as a home care company, we tell the aides not to ask any questions. We tell them not to get involved on the medical side of things because they are not medical professionals. And just what you said is take the paperwork that the doctor gives them and make sure the family gets it. And if the family has questions, let them call the doctor if need be. But we are not there to make medical judgments or to be involved in that conversation, because communication is where these things fall through the cracks, and we're not set up to be able to do that. So that's a great point that you're bringing up, Rachel, is you can go the extra mile and help out with those things.
Yeah. And also just for, in terms of the special needs planning, that's a big part of it. When we get an inquiry, this person could be, max assist transfers and be expecting to go on an airplane or whatever it may be. And there's a lot of figuring out, a lot of problem solving that has to happen when people want to go places, whether it be local or, global. And the special needs vacation planning done by a clinician ensures that the time is going to be fun. And our focus is always going to be to improve quality of life through joyful experiences. And even going to the doctors is a very joyful experience with us, as we're, keep the conversation going with the clients. We put on their favorite music. We really give them a sense that they are a king or queen, and that is the way I want all of my clients to feel when they're with my clinicians.
And that's a good, sorry, Brandon, I'm just taking over a little bit but that's a good distinction to make as well, Rachel, because when you look at a home care company that's doing transportation, they're showing up in a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry, and if there's a wheelchair or a walker involved, that is about as complicated as we can get when it comes to getting somebody in and out of the car. And again, that still might be very difficult depending on somebody's mobility challenges. Maybe they're overweight and they are a very heavy person, and getting them out of that bucket seat and up they got to pivot, right? And then they got to lift up out of the car. And that could be a lot of work for an individual caregiver to do, especially if they're in a really high car or they're in a really low car. And if somebody has those mobility challenges, a home care company is unlikely to be able to accommodate anything other than a regular sedan or an SUV that somebody's going to be traveling in, versus what you're able to do for somebody. And I think that's a good distinction to make, because maybe that's something to talk about, of the different type of vehicles you have and how you can accommodate those individuals.
Absolutely. So we like to do transfers into the car because it's the highest skill level of that we want to promote with our clients. We have special adaptations that we use sometimes, like a handle that goes in the side of the door, or a very slippery surface to help on the seat, sometimes a pivot disc. It depends on the client. And then there are people that cannot get out of their wheelchairs. And so we do have a wheelchair accessible van that we can use as needed. But again, we like to promote doing the transfers because that is a form of exercise and engagement for the client.
So Rachel, you say so it's a form of exercise, you say. Are you actually having them participate
In the transfers?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if they are in a wheelchair and we get to the car door, I'm going to have them push up from their wheelchair. I'm going to have them reach for certain areas. I'm going to have them step. I'm going to give them verbal cues throughout to make sure that they're doing it safely. They have to then lift their legs into the car. They might need some assistance with that, but still their muscles are activating.
Rachel, can you give us an example of maybe somebody you've worked with recently and what that looked like? Or if I'm putting you too much on the spot, maybe tell us like a common service that what's the most common thing that you've been engaged for?
Well, so most common thing has been doctor's appointments. And for example, I picked up a lady in Taunton that had to go to Boston for a 9 o'clock appointment. We left at 7:30 in the morning and had a very nice ride in. She told me that my car seat was more comfortable than any surface she had sat on in the rehab for the past 2 weeks that she's been there. She was status post colostomy bag, and we were going to get the staples removed and see the surgeon. So we get there. It was very, it was tiring just getting into the car. She has been in bed for 2 weeks, sitting up from time to time in the rehab, but really very weak. And we got to the doctor's appointment. I transferred her out of the car, and it was a long haul at St. Elizabeth's to get where we needed to go. So I provided the, push in the wheelchair. We get there, and they had done their, they had to weigh her. So I knew how to bring the walker to the right spot so that she could safely step up onto the scale. And then we met with the doctor, and she had mentioned that she was having some issues urinating and that she was still using the catheter. He was very concerned about that and wanted to put her on medication. I noticed that her blood pressure was a little low when they did the initial check. And so I know from my experience that this medication can cause people to become dizzy and have orthostatic hypotension. So I asked the doctor if she could hold off on that medication until she sees the urologist the following week. And he said, "Oh, it should be fine. I'll take a reading." So he did a sit reading and then a standing reading, and she absolutely was already orthostatic hypotension. So he said, "Absolutely not. We're not going to start this medication." I was very happy to have been there in that situation to kind of prevent falls in the future for this lady. From there, we had to go to the lab. The lab was not right next door. It was on the same property, but we had a big distance to go. So again, we went over, and she did what she had to do there and got her back and into bed at the nursing home. The nursing home in this case was very responsive to everything that she needed. Other nursing homes aren't as much so, and I will stay with my client until they're settled and feel like they want me to leave. And then sometimes the nursing homes hire us because then they don't have to send an aide. So they're saving money on chair car plus aide, whereas this service is kind of all in one. And in that case, I expect the nursing home to be involved, bring the client to the lobby. I'll, get them back to the lobby, but it's not the client's money at that point. It's the nursing home money, and they should be an active participant in the process. My experience working in nursing homes, my whole career has been, you need people to follow up. You need people to kind of stay active in the conversation to make sure that the things that are supposed to happen. And I'm happy to be that person connecting the dots and keeping things moving for clients.
So thanks, Rachel. I've certainly learned a lot about what you do today, what COTA Travel does. And thank you, a special thank you to Ryan, who stepped in on short notice today because we had a cancellation, but I'm really kind of glad that this worked out the way it did, because I think our audience is really seeing where the home care and Rachel's services can work together synergistically to get people out of the house and where they need to go, whether that's a doctor's appointment or some family function or some other fun thing. So does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add?
I just want to say I really do try to use my business as a platform to encourage people to live their best life. It is an opportunity to be able to encourage seniors to make the choices that will give them a fulfilled time here until the very end. And my focus has always been on simple pleasures. They really make a huge difference in people's quality of life. And to be that person to coordinate that for people and make sure that they are living their best life is really providing me with my best life as well.
Absolutely. And I would just say that certainly, you know, for the time being, it being, you know, May of 2022, transportation services will continue to be a struggle for home care companies. And, you know, the idea is that, you know, obviously, if you're looking for medical support and transportation or long distance traveling, somebody like Rachel can do a great job with that. But going to the gym or going to the grocery store on a regular basis is likely going to be something that's supported by somebody that's very local to that individual town, like a council on aging, or maybe a neighbor or a family friend that you can pay a little bit of money to, or it has to be a situation where their caregiver orders an Uber or the home care company orders an Uber on behalf of your loved one so that they can travel back and forth to be out in the community. And that's just part of the added cost in the home care field. So it's not the greatest answer in the world, but there are solutions for the problem. Unfortunately, they do continue to cost a little bit more money. So, you know, that's just kind of the reality that we're facing. But certainly when you need somebody of what Rachel's caliber can do, I highly recommend it and think that she should be the first call. And then that way you can make sure not only somebody's going to get to their destination, but they're going to be with somebody that you can trust and rely on.
Okay, well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Rachel. This brings our presentation to a close. If you have any additional questions for either of our presenters, they would love to hear from you. Their contact information is going to be posted at the end of this recording. So thanks again for watching.